What up, y'all? So let's get into day 7 of the Diddy trial. If you want to see all my other videos covering the case day by day, even going all the way back to when Cassie filed her lawsuit, y'all can check out my playlist. But let's pick up with Diddy's assistant, David James. Now, let me tell y'all something. Reports is saying that David is very witty. He will get back with you if you say something like wrong to him. Like he be on it, okay? But let's go through and see what he has to say. So David stated from his personal experience, he's never seen any physical violence between Diddy and Cassie. He said one night Diddy did come home and was upset because somebody had told a blog that Diddy had hit Cassie while they were in the club. Diddy essentially accused David of possibly writing the post, so he searched David's internet history, and he said that was kind of scary because he had never been accused of anything like that before or had anybody search his internet browser. He said he was instructed to take Cassie, some Roscoe's chicken, to the hotel at the London. All right, so David is now corroborating what Cassie says, that whenever Diddy would beat her, he would put her up in a hotel and make her stay there until she heals. So you have a second person co-signing what Cassie has said. He talked about how his major role in his job was to always set up the hotel rooms for Diddy. Diddy liked applesauce, Jell-O, Fiji water, and he also had to set up his medicine bag that included Viagra, ecstasy, Percocets. He said he would have to pay for those things out of pocket, and then Bad Boy would reimburse him, usually through the bodyguard Roger Bonds. He also said he had to pick up drugs from the pharmacy, like Percocets, that were registered in his name. But he never gave Diddy permission to use his name. All right, sounds a little fraudish to me. Sounds like fraud, okay? I ain't saying it's fraud, it sounds like fraud. This is leaning more so into kind of like the RICO charges. Diddy would have doctors write fake prescriptions in other people's names so he can get the medicine. He also testified that sometimes he would have to buy drugs from a guy named One Stop. All right, this is now corroborating Don's testimony because Don said One Stop would be the guy supplying Diddy all of the drugs. He said one night he went to a hotel because Diddy asked him to bring his iPad. And he said when he got there, nobody answered the door, so he let himself in. And when he got in there, Cassie was essentially dead asleep and another man was in the room, but he ran away and he was naked. And he said that kind of shook him up a little bit. So he pretty much said he figured Diddy was in the shower, Cassie was asleep, and maybe the dude was in there for a freak off. That's kind of like what the vibe was in the courtroom of what he was insinuating. He never said it outright because I don't think David knew what a freak off was. He was just explaining his experience. Like, I went into the hotel room, I saw a man, I heard the shower running. So, you know, I'm thinking maybe this is what the freak offs was. So the feds asked him, has he ever taken drugs? He said, yeah, one time he took one of Diddy's S pills. He said Diddy walked up to him and was like, bro, are you high? He said Diddy threatened to keep this video of him being high just in case. And David said them ecstasy pills had him Diddy bopping around the party. He was high as a kite. He also spoke about the time that one of Diddy's bracelets went missing, and Diddy sent one of his bodyguards to David's room and searched all of his stuff, searched his girlfriend's stuff, and then forced him to take a lie detector test, which he pretty much passed. But that was still a very intimidating situation that he had to go through. He also spoke about the incident at Mel's Diner. Cassie also talked about this as well, where him and D-Rock went to the restaurant and they ran into Suge Knight. D-Rock called Diddy and was like, hey, Suge in the restaurant. Diddy told them to come home and get him. David, the assistant, said he got back to the house and he was kind of walking away, and Diddy was like, nah, bro, come on, you drive and take us back. He said he was scared, but that was his job. He said Diddy had 3 guns sitting on his lap. It was only 3 people in the car, so he was scared, like, man, I hope he don't make me have to use one of these guns. He said by the time they had got back to the diner, Suge had left. He said after that day, he put in his notice and was like, yo, I can't do this. I gotta go. He said he was offered like different positions in the company, but he felt like his life was in danger, so he had to leave. I mean, these sound like some more elements of the RICO charge. We got some violence. We got some drugs going on. I don't know. So Diddy's lawyer decided to cross-examine David. Diddy went with Mark Agnafilio. So Mark was like, when y'all was at the diner, did you leave D-Rock to go get Diddy? David was like, well, why would I do that? That makes no sense. Mark said, do you know where Diddy got the guns from? David said, no. Mark said, have you ever been in a situation like this before? He was like, no. Mark was like, so you telling me in your former job, you used to be a salesperson and now you running around doing drive-bys? David was like, yeah, it was not an ideal situation to be in. So Diddy's team is trying to poke holes into his credibility by saying, oh, now you saying you some type of gangster. In my opinion, I think David pretty clearly told us that he was not a gangster because he quit. Diddy's lawyer said, did you get immunity for this testimony? He said, I signed a proffer agreement. Essentially, what a proffer agreement is, you can sit down with the police or the feds and they'll say, hey, you get to be a king for the day and tell us everything that you know, and everything is going to stay right here in this room, and we won't prosecute you for anything that you tell us right now. So Diddy's lawyer said, did you meet with the feds this morning? David said, yeah, briefly. Mark said, what did y'all talk about? David said, your cross-examination style. Mark said, okay, I got a few more mundane questions for you. David said, I like mundane questions. It was nitpicking with each other. So Mark started asking him these random questions like, do you know that Diddy enjoys ketchup? He said, yes. David said he liked Astroglide, condoms, and baby oil. He said, matter of fact, I used to pay for those things out of pocket and have to get reimbursed. Diddy didn't want me to run it through the business name. Mark said, so you and Roger Bonds, y'all was pretty cool. David was like, yeah, Bad Boy was kind of like a family. Mark said, well, what was your relationship with Chef Jordan? He said, professional. Mark said, did you choke her? He said, no. David said, we did have an incident, but I just grabbed her arms and told her to stay in her lane. And then she went to HR on me, and Diddy told me not to be putting my hands on women and to go and buy her a gift. So I just rolled her a blunt and gave it to her. But yo, this is crazy. So if you think about it, David sounds like one of them guys who not really about that life. But if you remember, if you go back to my previous day, when David was first introduced to the group, he said all the security guards, including Roger Bonds, was like, hey, don't get involved in nothing and stay in your lane. So I think this shows how the behavior of Bad Boy starts to infiltrate into people even like David. Like David even acting a little gangster now. He telling Jordan to stay in her lane. He telling the chef, hey, stay in your lane. Diddy's lawyer Mark said, have you ever been with prostitutes? He said, yeah. Roger Bonds brought a lady to me, but I didn't know she was a prostitute until she asked for $200. David said, I got mad. I didn't want to pay no prostitute. I didn't know what was going on. And then Diddy's lawyer was like, okay, I'm done. So then the feds come back up. The feds say, David, tell us about the incident in New Jersey. David said, Diddy and Chef Jordan got into a little altercation, and Diddy told me to go file a police report and say that the chef had hit Diddy first. He said, I left, I rode around a little bit, but I never made the report because I didn't want to lie on her. The feds was like, no further questions. Next, they called up Cassie's mom. Her testimony was very short, straight to the point. She spoke about how she only would see Cassie once or twice a year, and she never knew that she was getting abused. She said Cassie emailed her one day and said that Diddy threatened to release a sex tape of her, and he threatened to hurt her and Kid Cudi. Cassie's mom said she was sick to her stomach, and then Diddy demanded that they pay him $20,000 to recoup his losses from Kid Cudi. Now, this is just me speculating. We haven't gotten to this yet, but I'm assuming Diddy was like, yo, I paid all this money to put Cassie in the studio with Kid Cudi, and she ended up going with him, so y'all gonna pay me back for that money. She said her and her husband went to the bank, took out a loan, paid him the $20,000 because she was scared that he would harm Cassie. She said she wired the money to the bank account his accountant told him to send it to, but then about 5 days later, the money came back into her account. So all these little random things are tiptoeing into RICO territory to me because this sounds like extortion. Not only does it sound like extortion, it's also a power play. Diddy didn't need the money. He just wanted to make her parents pay for his feelings being hurt. He wanted to show that he has control. She also said there was another incident when Cassie and Diddy got into it, but D-Rock was holding her back because she was trying to hit Diddy because Diddy had Cassie's phone. Mama was like, I'm trying to get to him, and D-Rock not letting me get to him. She said Diddy did eventually leave, and he left in Cassie's car. Diddy's lawyer stood up and was like, Miss Ventura, no further questions. So they ain't even want to cross-examine her, and I think that was smart because getting up here, badgering this lady, Cassie's mom, who is the victim, no, there was no point in doing it. There was nothing you can get out of Cassie's mom that would help Diddy's case, so they did the right thing by saying, look, we have no questions. The final witness they called up was the Punisher. Now, he pretty much testified that Diddy and Cassie would call him over for the freak-offs. He said every time he was there, it seemed like Cassie was enjoying herself. He said every time they were finished, Cassie would hand him some cash and pay him, and everything would be cool. He did say now sometimes when he couldn't get aroused, that may affect his pay. He wasn't sure how they calculated payment. He said after a while, he just couldn't perform. He was uncomfortable with Diddy always being in the room. And he said now he's writing a book about erectile dysfunction. And he says he does talk about Cassie and Diddy in the book, but he uses fake names. So keep in mind, the prosecution called him to testify on their behalf. And I think he actually helped the prosecution and the defense. He helped the prosecution by saying he was there and he was paid to essentially be an escort. But then he helped the defense on the trafficking side because he said it seemed like Cassie was enjoying herself. And the final witness for the day was Special Agent Gerard. He was a part of the team who raided Diddy's Miami home. He spoke about how he found AR-15 rifle parts, toys, baby oil, gun magazines with serial numbers cut off the weapons, and that's pretty much how day 7 ended. So to me, the highlights of day 7 sounded like Diddy's assistant and Mark Agnifilio kind of going at each other and being quippy. But yo, leave your comments below. Do you think day 7 helped the defense or the prosecution? Thanks for hanging out with me. Make sure you check out my next video for day 8.